Welcome to BAM It with John Michael and Mari, covering all things business, accounting, management, marketing, and IT, the place where businesses and entrepreneurs find the forest through the trees.
Hello and welcome to BAM It. This is Mari Peterson with Marketing Outpost, and of course my
friend. You hesitate so hard to call me your friend. I'm John Michael with Peridot Consulting.
Well, I was going to call you my sidekick again, but that seems to bother you.
It bothers you.
Can I kick you? Anyway, on this episode, we have another special guest with us, and his name is Gabe. And he is so interesting because he does a lot in the way of technology. And we're not talking necessarily about computers. We're talking about the use of certain other forms of emerging technology, such as 3D modeling, drone, and so forth. But we're going to let Gabe get into that. First, before we get started, we wanted to start with an interesting fact. But in this episode, we're going to let our guest start with an interesting quote instead. Go ahead, Gabe.
Thanks, Mari. The quote I'd like to share is from one of my favorite authors, Douglas Adams. He wrote famously Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And Adams had a saying about technology that was that technology is the word we use for everything that doesn't work yet.
Don't look at me, Mari. I just love it because I love that book. It's one of my favorite books, and his view on time travel I think is awesome. But that quote is one of the things I love about Douglas Adams is how he would just kind of bring it down to reality a little bit and prove or point out about how we as humans tend to overthink things.
Love that. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
I viewed it as he's talking about the things that don't even exist yet.
Yeah, kind of that liminal space between what we have and understand, our tools for our jobs or our lives, and what we can dream of. And right in the middle of those things, those half tools, those things that everyone's excited about, that are super, sexy and fun to work with, but a lot of people struggle with, maybe aren't as widely available.
All right, so I want to go take a step back and have you give us a little bit of background about yourself.
Oh, sure. I'm originally from Kansas City, Missouri. And Missouri, I've always said, is a great place to start because no matter what direction you go, things get better and better and better.
Is it flat in Missouri or is there any hills there?
It's mostly flat unless you're in the Ozarks, kind of in the south central part of the state.
Oh, that's a great TV show. Not a plug.
Oh, totally, yeah.
We're geeking out over here, Mari.
Okay,
give us
ahead.
Our moment.
Okay, geeking out moment. Go ahead.
But I left Missouri in my late teens and just spent a few years just being a vagabond, wandering around the country, having adventures, hitchhiking, backpacking. Eventually that led me to Alaska, where I lived for a couple years, and then back to then settling in Asheville, where I live now with my family. And a few years ago, I started a commercial photography business, which has been just one of the greatest adventures of my life. I've really loved being an entrepreneur. And I was surprised by, although I set out to take pictures, how much technology would play a role in my client work.
So let's talk about that because I do know your photography and it's beautiful. You've actually done some pretty high-level stuff in that arena, but then you also do other forms of creative technology. You want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. Some of my early clients, they hired me for a lot of commercial and architectural photography for some new developments in Western North Carolina. And along the way, I was working closely with their marketing director. We found that we weren't able to convey everything we wanted to their clients. And so we started brainstorming ways to leverage new technology to achieve that. The use of a drone was huge, being able to get aerial perspectives over large tracts of land and then to use that for documentation's sake, as well as aesthetically to create what we hoped were beautiful videos that they could share with their clients, their potential clients. It was a big win. We also made use of 3D modeling. We use Matterport camera and its associated software to really show just the high resolution models of the spaces that they were building.
Is that in conjunction with the drone when you say this 3D modeling, or is that independent of a drone?
Independent, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Totally different things.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my ignorance is going to show throughout today's episode, so I apologize. So you are what is it, an FAA piloted drone? I mean, help me out here.
Yeah. So to operate, to use a drone in any kind of commercial capacity in North Carolina, you need to be past the FAA's Part 107 licensing exam. And I did that. And then also you need to be licensed through NC's DOT. And then any of the larger clients will require you to carry insurance as well, because you have a giant flying robot that'll just crash into stuff.
So all those regulations, is North Carolina more strict or less strict than the average state when it comes to that?
Well, I don't have a perfect knowledge of it, but I would say probably around the average. I don't know if every state requires an additional licensure through their Department of Transportation.
So the fact that you have to do that is that's a pretty strict thing, I think. And having that license, what does it give you the quote unquote power to do that like a backyard enthusiast can't do?
Oh, that's a great question. And really, it's to operate a drone for any kind of commercial purpose, to make money. Someone could have the same drone that I do and fly it for fun. No sweat. They don't need any kind of licensure right now.
Oh, so it's just if you have it for a for-profit reason, you have to have, and it's a license through the FAA?
It is.
Okay. So getting that license, I guess because one of the biggest thing I hear about with drones is airspace and getting in the way of planes. Isn't that sort of the biggest fear they have with drones, is other than privacy, and we can get into that in a minute, but primarily interfering with airplanes? Is that? Yeah,
that's been an issue that they've dealt with in the past. So yeah, huge factor is understanding airspace, different types of airspace and the restrictions that go along with it where you can operate your drone. For example, any airport has some restricted airspace around it that the drone won't even take off, won't allow itself to launch.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know that. So that something in the drone cuts itself off if it's near a...
Absolutely.
Oh, that's cool. Sorry. Technology is cool.
So John Michael's geeking out over here. So the way that I know Gabe, and the reason why he's a guest on this episode, is I met Gabe through another client on a project. But what I really appreciated about Gabe, in addition to his professionalism and quality of work, was his creative way of thinking for the business. So the purpose of this episode, or one of the goals, was to talk about how businesses can use some of these emerging technologies and to, I guess, go beyond just experience. I think when people think about photography or they think about virtual tours, they're thinking about it more from an immersive experience perspective. So you see a lot of Hollywood using these sort of emerging technologies. But how can the everyday business person who has a store, a shop, from being a lawyer to being an accountant to any one of those other regular businesses, maybe incorporate some of these emerging technologies in their work?
Oh, I love that. That's a great question. And I guess the answer is kind of twofold from my perspective. One is that there is all kinds of technology out there that you can do research about. Look, just Google your industry, see what people are doing, see what people are experimenting with, and give it a shot. So, because in addition to the utility that technology can bring to your business, there's so much value in being able to share with your client base that you are exploring that technology. I was recently at a meeting with a pretty high-level advertising marketing firm in Charlotte, and they were sharing with me some of the work that they were doing for their largest client, which is an international brand, just huge, big business, the dream of everyone in marketing or advertising. And I was amazed to see that an enormous part of their plan, they had a whole nother website next to this, the main brand website, that was all about the innovative labs that they were setting up to explore virtual reality and augmented reality and how it pertained to the client, which for the client was a huge hardware store chain. And it had nothing to do with it. I mean, sure, you might be able to come up with like some ways here or there, but for the most part, that kind of technology did not directly apply. And yet it still had value because it showed that they were looking at all this really exciting stuff, that like the sparkliest, most exciting buzzwords out there were that they were looking at it, that could still be, that could still glitter their client. And I think that says a lot. So when I share like some of the 3D models that I've done for clients with new potential people I'm talking to that I may work with, even if that's not what they're looking for, they're amazed by that technology. It makes them feel safer in a way, more confident in my knowledge and my expertise. It's a great way of it serves as an icebreaker.
Well, one great thing about technology is it illustrates in a tangible way innovation. We talked about innovation in a prior episode, but things like one of the prime definitions of innovation is just creating an atmosphere where competition is irrelevant. But you're talking about showcasing this technology, and it's something that the client or the customer didn't necessarily know they wanted or needed, but they're still enthralled by it, and they're still find a utility out of it. So it's kind of like creating a market out of nothing in some ways.
Yeah, I love that. I love the concept of innovation. And I've often thought about how innovation, at least for me, I'm not a very creative person, but I am really good at imitating the things that I see. And I think that, at least for me in my business, I would do a bunch of research and I would imitate the most successful people I could find, emulate it as much as I could, and then from there try to innovate. In a way, I would say that the most important aspect for me about using technology, and especially in acquiring new business, has been taking technology that I'm already familiar with and then pivoting, using a pivot to apply that technology to a separate industry that may not be as familiar with it. Yeah. And that is, I think, what I would call innovation.
Yeah, well, that's pure innovation, is applying new technology to a way that it hasn't been formerly used. That we can come up with would be real estate companies where they, historically have just pictures of the house, and then they got a little bit more creative and had these like 360 pictures, and now they have drones coming in as the drone technology comes in, and that's sort of it's commonplace now almost that every
That's a perfect example. Yeah.
And it's, when drones first came out, you would never think that, for example, the real estate, it would be a huge niche in the real estate industry, but it is.
However, I think one example case study I wanted Gabe to go into a little bit about is taking that technology, like let's say a virtual tour that is so popular in real estate, and we applied that in a business case. And in that business case, then it was Gabe's suggestion to add embedded videos that allow that client to then take that virtual tour with the embedded videos and use it as a sales tool, so that I see technology as a solution. And the solution is that people are not traveling as much as they used to. They can go online, look at anything that they need and they want, but sometimes the personal experience of actually walking through a space is, of course, better than just looking at it on a website. Mm-hmm. So a virtual tour allows you to walk through a space, and with the added embedded videos, Gabe was also able to allow them to demonstrate their product. So I think more companies can use the combined technology of the virtual tour and videos and probably a drone and photography to really enhance the user experience. So can you provide some other examples of your personal business experience in these sort of case examples?
Yeah, thanks. And that was such a fun project to work on. I really loved that, to be able to take that problem and to work with you to come up with a solution where we created that model that had so much practical utility that then their sales staff was able to show, again, not only that they had the tool, but to frame it through technology in a way that seemed just incredibly impressive to their clients. Another example of that has been some work that I've done with local counties here, Buncombe and Transylvania counties. I've used drones to create aerial photography that was used to generate maps that the county was then able to use at their landfill sites to calculate their compaction rates, to figure out how much garbage and refuse was going into the landfill, and to get an idea of how much time they had left before they need to permit a new site, potentially saving tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it was so fun being able to go out there and fly the drone and meet all the men and women working at those sites, and just to figure out, what problems they had and find ways to solve them.
What about, and I would say one of the biggest industries where I think this has utility is in healthcare. Can you give some examples of that? Because we've had that discussion before.
Yeah. I am the proud father of 4 kids. So my wife and I, we are very tired and we're very happy. But I've been through the whole deal of supporting my wife when our children were born. And most of them were born here in Asheville at Mission Hospital. And as you go through all the classes preparing for that time of life and everything, it's pretty hectic and exciting. They take you to Mission, which is just an enormous hospital. Not as big as a metropolitan area, but for this region, it's really big. And everything looks the same, especially when you get into its inner workings. And then you go up to that fourth floor, up, the special elevator, and they try to, get you familiar with how to find labor and delivery and what person you need to talk to, what desk you go to, so that when your wife's in labor, you can go and you'll be comfortable and familiar. I really love the idea of using the same kind of 3D model that we created for that client where we embedded the videos for hospitals, so that especially when people are going for like pre-operation consulting or before labor and delivery, that they can be sent a link that they can open on their smartphone, tablet, computer, and be walked through that entire process, that they can send that to family members, to moms and grandmas and grandpas that are coming to visit a new baby, so they know exactly where to go. It'll also add just that extra little spark of elation of, there's something exciting technology that they can figure out that's intuitive in their hand, and just make the whole process a little easier.
See, I love that idea too, because I think, again, it solves a problem. And that's a lot of what marketing and technology, when combined, can do.
I'm just thinking, I would love that maybe with a grocery store, because anytime I'm like, my wife sends me to the grocery store to buy something, and I always have no clue where it's at. And I end up walking around that grocery store about 15 times. It should be on this shelf, and it's not. And it's on some special shelf. I'm just saying.
But you know why they do that? They want you to walk around that grocery store 15 times, so you pass by certain other things,
correct.
and you end up spontaneously buying.
The mischievous marketing aspect behind. I'm just saying, it'd be cool. I could go to a grocery store. You can kind of map out where you're going, what's where. Because I stand in my phone.
I do agree with you.
I've done this quite literally. I've stood in the middle of a grocery store and Googled, where would I find XYZ product in the grocery store? Because I have literally walked 3 times around this place and can't find this whatever
friggin' nut,
this special grits or something that my wife is wanting me to buy. And I'm like, it's not in the noodle aisle, it's not in the flour aisle, where the heck would it be? And I've Googled, and I've actually, they're like, this is in the XYZ section. I'm like, okay, so I find the XYZ section and go. But it would just be neat if I pulled up the grocery store website and put in the product and it took me to where it was on the shelf.
John
That
Michael,
would
I
be cool.
love that idea. And I think that that's a really great example of an opportunity to take current technology and just pivot a little bit to disrupt something else, because we're all conditioned. I mean, we are all conditioned, but man, our kids are going to be totally conditioned to always look for that informational instant gratification where they can reach in their pocket and what's the answer to this question. And so isn't it intuitive that when we're in a situation like a grocery store looking for something that we don't know where it is, that
or a big department store.
that we would go to that same resource,
the mall, whatever.
but so far
Lowe's,
there's no answer yet.
Home Depot, or I can't name drop it.
I can't find anything in Home Depot or Lowe's that I'm looking for. I end up walking around that whole thing.
And they're so nice and friendly, but if they had like just a nice app that would, geocentric on you, and you came in and you just say, I'm looking for this nails for this cabinet, and there you go.
Absolutely.
I agree. So now, talking about that, you were recently at a conference. I'd like for you to share what some of the things you learned or some of the new trends in technology.
So full disclosure, the conference, actually, I spent the whole weekend going to, I went to a discussion panel in Charlotte, and then I was at the Thrive conference in Durham. It had very little to do with technology, or I guess loosely photography. It was for AIGA, both events, which is the Professional Association of Design. But AIGA is an entity that I grew up with. My family always participated in Kansas City. And to me, it was always kind of presented as this like almost church-like experience for all creatives. Whether it was photographers, illustrators, designers, there was always a lot of marketing professionals involved too. And I love being around creative people. So I've been helping create a branch of AIGA in Asheville. And I went along with some of the other new board members of our emerging branch to go visit Durham and Charlotte during these events. And it was amazing seeing these people as they were talking about new trends and user experiences and UX and design. And then especially I was fascinated by hearing the stories of all these incredible speakers about how they developed their businesses. And some of the common threads were that a lot of the people who spoke didn't have illustrious, fancy degrees or backgrounds. Several of them either didn't go to school or didn't finish school, and yet now have amazing, thriving careers. And it was all through leveraging some of the newer technology, especially social media. There was one design team made up of these twin girls, the Hood sisters, who talked all about after not finishing at a community college that they kept working on their design and sharing it through Instagram in particular. Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and that they just kept hitting that every day and treated themselves as a client and never missed a beat. And then before long, they were having national brands like Red Bull and Facebook and Disney getting in touch with them through social media and hiring them for other projects. So, I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of the traditional routes to success are, well, they're just not as important as they used to be.
Or not as linear.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and I mean, that's a perfect example of that is just not a linear route to success. That's not going to college, building a resume, building experience. Those girls just went and did some great product-based social media and marketing and got some of the biggest clients you could ask for as a person that does that.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think non-linear is a great way to put it. I saw that in action, maybe in kind of a metaphor later that night. The Asheville board ended up getting together with the board from AIGA Durham and many of the speakers, and we went out downtown for pizza and a beer after everything was over. And we went to this great pizza place downtown, and it was a kind of a go in and order at the counter kind of deal. And it was so popular that it looked like we were going to be standing in line for 45 minutes. And there was just this long line of people chatting and waiting to eat. I was hungry. And I thought, man, this is the linear route. I could stand here and wait. But I think maybe whenever you're in a situation like that, just stop and look around. Because I've looked over to my right, and there was the bar. And there was a sign over the bar saying, order hot food here. Two guys in the bar went up, grabbed a beer, ordered food, and had it. I was sitting down there and done by the time the rest of the team was able to order and come to the table.
Yeah. That's what happens when you get in line and follow the rules. Sometimes you wait in line.
So what would be some of the other then different ways that you have changed your perspective on technology from this conference?
After the conference, again, not totally pertinent to my career, but I was amazed at seeing how technology had changed design. That all these designers, which was definitely the bulk of the crowd, were sitting there with tablets, with their iPad Pros or whatever, and their Apple Pencils, and that they were just sketching all the time. And I can't even imagine what it would have looked like, probably pretty amazing 20 years ago when that was all paper. But there were just tablets everywhere with people creating incredible works of art and just visual, illustrative notes of what was going on around them. And I think that's a really new thing. And I'm excited to see where else that'll go.
Yeah. No, I mean, I forget. I was having a conversation the other day about the 80s version of the future, which is now, in the all 80s movies said the future was between 2014 and 2020, and we're living that. And, Back to the Future is an example, and what they got right and what they got wrong. They got FaceTime right, but they got like the hoverboards wrong, that sort of thing. But
soon.
Yeah, soon. They're coming. But my point is that in many ways, technology has gone to a point that even the 80s visionaries couldn't even imagine. And that's a great example of like the tablet technology and the phone technology is well beyond that we've ever thought it was going to be 10 years ago. The computing power in our cell phone is like more than exponentially greater than the computing power of the Apollo 1 lander.
Right.
I mean, just to think of that and how technology, I forget the name of the formula, but it keeps multiplying every year.
Exponential.
The exponential, some formula, but it multiplies over so many years. And that every 3 or 4 years, we have double the capacity we had the 3 or 4 years prior. It just is at such a fast pace. And how it interferes, or not interferes, but intermingles into the business community of what you've been saying, and how we just, it's seamless. It's, when it's happening while you're living it, you don't notice it. But if you take a step back like you did at that conference and just start just looking and thinking, 20 years ago, I would have been walking into this would have been Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I would have been walking off the phone booth right now into the future seeing this.
Well, when you talk about the value of exploring new technology, I want you to go into that because in my world, marketing always incorporates creatives. It also now tends to incorporate more technology. And what would you say to a business owner that says, hey, I have this brick and mortar store, what can I do that can enhance or create a different kind of experience for my customers? What should they do in trying to explore that new kind of technology for them?
That's interesting. What are they selling?
They're just a brick and mortar. Let's say I'm either a bakery, I'm a craft cocktail bar, I could be a tire shop. What would you say to them?
Oh, I mean, there's so many fun ways to work with a client like that. And the idea of a bakery just sounds really charming and fun. Maybe something for a bakery would be working with some developers to create an app that maybe exploring an app that use augmented reality. And so we would go through with the owner, with the bakers, and figure out maybe what their best-selling pastries were, what day they make their sticky buns. And then we get great images of that, 3D models or 3D photography of their best-selling products. And then we enter that into the augmented reality app. And so then maybe we try to get their regular customers to download the app or whatever, and then kind of maybe in like a quote of the day kind of format, where every day they get an inspirational quote that makes them feel good to start their day, but it also lets them look through the screen of their tablet or phone and see that like just out of the oven sticky bun, which is what they made that day. And just to kind of remind them about, this great experience that they hopefully had at the bakery, in a way that they're going to want to share with their friends because no one else has done anything like that. And then that's exciting. And then more people will go to the bakery, and it would be a super fun project to work on.
You need to develop an app that creates a scent so you can smell those sticky buns.
I don't know. The visual is enough for me. I'm getting hungry.
I know. The 3D augmented sticky bun. Who brought up sticky buns? Was that you?
So give me an example of something that you would like to see in the future in the use of technology.
Something I'm really personally excited about is where we're going to go with virtual reality. I've been talking a lot with our local VR consulting company, Better Than Unicorns, about different kinds of partnerships we can explore. I ended up investing in a lot of VR gear myself to explore how I can integrate our virtual models. And I'm still messing around with that. But in the meantime, man, there's so many amazing things already. Speaking of design, Google's Tilt Brush application, I mean, it's like MS Paint used to be for us in the 90s.
What is Google's Tilt Brush application?
Yeah, so do you remember MS Paint? Like when, so it's like that, except you're totally immersed in it. You're standing maybe in outer space, and you can paint all around you in 3 dimensions, and then you can walk through your creation. You can paint sculptures.
Do you have to wear Okay.
Yeah, you're totally immersed in virtual reality. You've goggles and headset on.
Oh, that's so cool.
You're on another planet. And you can paint with fire, with bubbles. You can see the incredible works of art that designers have created using Tilt Brush. Or at a lunch we just left, there was a lawyer who was mentioning how he loves playing around in Google Earth. Google Earth in VR is unfreaking believable. You're as it starts up, it says, wait, please, like instead of now loading, it says building the earth or building the world. And you see it come to life around you, at your feet. All of a sudden you're standing a giant, a colossus over the Mojave Desert where the roads just snake through like shoelaces underneath you. And it's not like you're watching it on a screen. You're really there. And then a flash of light, and all of a sudden you're standing on top of Half Dome in Yosemite, and you can walk up to the edge and look down.
So that's for real? You can do that now?
Absolutely.
So I
have to go get one of those Google VR headsets, and
I'll bring it over to the office.
Holy cow, that's cool.
My phone has some kind of thing you can buy with it. Can you do that with those, or is that something special?
I'm not sure what applications play well with what brands, but yeah.
I mean, in theory, it's just if I have a virtual reality mask on, I could do most of that stuff.
A lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
So the higher end experiences, and I would think like the really immersive ones, they're still pretty expensive to get into. HTC, their new version of their Vive headset, which at some conference in Nevada, I think was recently unveiled, it actually tracks not just your head movement, but your eye movement. Mm-hmm. So as you're saying that, you can look up just with your eyes, not your head, and see what's all around you.
Oh, wow.
So when I hear this, I'm always one of those, how does this apply in real life? Mm-hmm. And I have a mother in a nursing home. We're all aging. Probably 80% of us are going to be impacted by either ourselves or somebody else in a nursing home. The reason I say this is because once you get there, you don't really leave. It becomes a hassle. It is also sometimes painful. They don't move around as well. And I actually could see somebody in a nursing home who used to travel a lot, for example, because if you ever been in a nursing home for a while and you talk to the other people that live there, they'll tell you all about their travels. And it'd be really cool if they could put on one of these headsets and you could say, okay, do you remember that time you used to go to the beach a lot? Well, we're going to take you back to that beach and give those residents there a different kind of experience. And I wonder what that would do for their, quality of life. And
yeah, I'm so happy you brought that up, because I've actually been working with the retirement community lately to develop with their recreation therapy department to create just that. We're going through and exploring the different options, the different appropriate hardware to set up for them. But yeah, that idea with some of our seniors that have limited mobility, but really their minds are still so active, to be able to go back to the farm that I grew up on in the mountains of Montana, to take them there, or to do an experience where they're underwater scuba diving again and to see a blue whale come up and just really make eye contact with the whale. Or again, back to tilt brush, to be able to just paint all around them. Yeah, to kind of just get away from maybe the current situation when they're dealing with possible pain or lack of mobility, and just go to a more relaxing and happy place. There's also been a lot of studies done about how virtual reality can help people who are struggling with PTSD, in particular veterans.
Wow. So I see this is how I look at technology, a solution, and also something that can improve, I think, quality of life. And I really like those two examples that you're giving there, especially with veterans or anybody else that has suffered a lot of trauma, and being able to maybe take them back or take them out of that situation temporarily. So moving on, I'd like to ask you my last question that I have about technologies. In the world of business, where do you see most people being attracted to technology? So I know we tend to think about Hollywood and immersive experience when it comes to virtual reality and augmented reality. Do you have any examples where you know of some businesses maybe who are thinking outside of the box and how they're using it?
That's a great question. The first one that comes to mind, again, is the project that we worked on together to create that model with the embedded videos. What are some other examples?
I read recently, for example, this is where I'd like to maybe head with this, is how restaurants are using augmented reality. So what do you think about that?
I think, actually, you know what? That's a great point. And I had a long conversation with a branding company over the weekend about that very thing, how they were looking at augmented reality and the best way to apply it to different businesses. And I think restaurants are a real go-to thought for that, to be able to see, a steaming dish right as the chef finished up with it, or an amazing cocktail, to see how it is put together, blended, and to be able to see it right there on the bar. And that's just fun too. I mean, I think everyone remembers how Pokemon Go swept the country. It was even getting referenced during the 2016 presidential campaigns. And that was the widest distribution of AR so far. I think that what we'll see, if I had to guess, in the next 5 to 10 years, at the longest, would be some kind of standard platform for experiencing augmented reality. Something that, because right now, at a restaurant, for example, you would need to go in and download that restaurant's particular app. You'd have to go in and download the Denny's app to see that Grand Slam or whatever on your plate. I think there needs to be something that makes it accessible to everyone. That's always there, maybe just in addition to the camera app on your phone.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today, Gabe, and I appreciate that, but I have one final question for you.
Sure.
Do you think, or what is your opinion on technology in the sense that it's inevitable, or is it something we can stop?
Stop.
And I say that because people are always saying that new technologies mean jobs are lost and so forth. But is it really something we can control?
Oh, sure. Personally, I think, no, I don't think we can control it, really. I think it's a part of us. I think it's a part of the human experience. To me, I think it's kind of like a hermit crab that's born without its shell, but then goes to find that shell. And we always associate the two as a part of the whole, or the ways that bees build hives. I think that technology is a part of us, something that we are somehow predestined to create. And right now, we're just a little too close to it to see the actual grand design of what it is we are creating. But I think it's a really exciting time to be alive and an amazing thing to be a participant in.
Well, I love that perspective and I appreciate that. I tend to agree with you. I do think that we're evolving, and evolving means, I think, incorporating technology, because I don't think it's really something we can avoid. So, with that, I'd like to say thank you to Gabe for being on our podcast.
Oh, thanks, Mari and John Michael. I really appreciate you having me on.
And thank you for listening. Be sure to review this episode. For more information on who we are or this podcast, please visit us at www.bamit.com. That's BAMM-IT.com. And join us for our next podcast featuring another guest, Amy Kosh, talking about managing self. Gabe, please tell us your email, contact information, and website.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can email me at gabe@swinneyphotography.com, SWINNEY photography. Instagram handle, Gabe Swinney.
Thank you.
The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast should not be considered professional advice and is for entertainment purposes only. The hosts and guests of this podcast may make terrible attempts at being funny, and this podcast does not defend the merits of this humor, nor does it guarantee that the humor will be successful. It is not guaranteed that you will find this as entertaining as the hosts find themselves.